Hello and welcome back to English Podcast Voice, the place where we break down English for you. We take those dense academic blueprints and turn them into something clear, actionable, and, actually useful. I'm your host, Quinn.
And I'm Riley. It is so good to have you with us, especially if you're one of those learners who feels like you're kind of sitting on that intermediate language plateau.
Oh, that plateau. It is so real, and it's so frustrating. We hear about it all the time. If you're in that B1 level, that sweet spot, you can have pretty good conversation. You can talk about your weekend, your hobbies. You can order food. I mean, we were looking at some source transcripts, and they were perfect examples. People just talking about, staying home, being a self-described homebody, or making simple meals like chicken and rice. You can. You get by.
And that's the thing, that ability to get by, that comfort with familiar topics, that is the exact definition of the B1 level. The official name is the threshold level in the Common European Framework of Reference. It's a real achievement to get there.
It is an achievement, definitely. But, and here's the but, this is where the wall goes up. The struggle, the really painful moment we want to tackle today, is when the conversation suddenly needs more complex words. Or it gets abstract.
Yeah, or you have to argue a point with some nuance.
Exactly. And you know in your head what you want to say, but the words just, they're not there. You can't grab them.
The source material we looked at is pretty blunt about this B1 difficulty, actually. It says that B1 learners often have, and I'm quoting here, lexical limitations that cause repetition and even difficulty with formulation at times.
Repetition. Oh, I feel that. You end up using the same 5 simple verbs for everything.
Right. We're still communicating, but it's a bit bumpy. You find yourself hesitating a lot, and you start using a strategy we call circumlocution.
Okay, hold on. Circumlocution. That is a very long, very academic-sounding word. Can we just spend a second on that one?
Absolutely. It's a great word to know. Circumlocution is basically the act of talking around a word you can't remember. You describe the concept, you give examples, you try to lead the listener to the word you're looking for.
So it's like a verbal detour?
A verbal detour. That's a perfect way to put it. It's effective. I mean, it can work, but it takes up a lot of mental energy, and it makes the conversation feel, well, a little unnatural.
Right. So if I want to say the economy is in a recession, but I can't find the word recession, I might say the money part of the country is feeling very bad right now.
You've nailed it. That's a classic example of circumlocution. It works, but it immediately signals that you have a linguistic limitation.
And that is the exact problem we want to solve today. How do we build the vocabulary, the competence and the confidence to make that jump from B1, the threshold level, up to B2, the vantage level?
And that's our mission for this deep dive. We are opening up the ultimate blueprint for language progress, the Common European Framework of Reference, or the CEFR. We're going to dissect the levels, its whole philosophy, and the 3 core competences you need to master.
3 competences. Okay, what are they?
Linguistic, sociolinguistic, and pragmatic. And mastering them is the key to making that B1 to B2 jump.
Okay. Linguistic, sociolinguistic, pragmatic.
Got it. And we're going to go really deep on how vocabulary, especially those tricky fixed expressions and idioms, really forms the bedrock of all that progress. We actually found a really fascinating distinction in the CEFR documents that separates the top learners from the ones who stay stuck in the middle.
Ooh, I like that. A secret distinction. And to keep you with us right to the very end of this deep dive, we're going to have a little pop quiz. We're going to test you on one of the most fundamental linguistic ideas out there. The difference between a simple mistake and a systematic error.
It sounds subtle, but it's not. Understanding that difference can completely change how you approach your studies. It really can.
Okay, sounds good. But before we get into the blueprint, we do have a quick request. It's mandatory. If you're getting value out of this deep dive, please just take 2 seconds right now to subscribe to English Podcast Voice and give this episode a quick like.
It genuinely helps us so much. It lets us bring these detailed, well-researched breakdowns to more learners just like you all over the world.
Thank you so much for that support. It means a lot. Okay, let's unpack this framework.
Let's do it.
So Riley, we talk about the CEFR all the time, but let's just start at the very beginning. For someone who's maybe heard the term but doesn't really know what it is, what exactly is the Common European Framework of Reference? And why should a learner care about this kind of formal-sounding thing?
That's the perfect place to start. At its heart, the CEFR is a descriptive tool. The source material calls it a calibrating instrument, which I know sounds a bit technical.
A calibrating instrument. Yeah, that sounds like something you'd find in a science lab. What does that actually mean?
It's just a fancy way of saying it's a tool for measuring things consistently. Its main job, really, is to establish a stable, accepted standard of measurement for language skills.
Okay, so it's a ruler.
Exactly. It's a standardized ruler for language. The whole point is to have a solid basis for the mutual recognition of language qualifications.
Mutual recognition.
Yeah.
So that means my certificate from one country means something in another country?
Precisely. If you achieve a B2 level on a test in Spain, it means the same thing as a B2 in the United States or the UK. It defines what a user can do at each level.
Got it. It creates a universal standard. So the whole system, it's built around these three big user categories, right? And each of those is broken down into 2 levels.
That's right, giving us the 6 levels from A1 all the way up to C2.
Okay, so let's just quickly map those 6 levels out for everyone. Where do we start?
We start with the basic user category. First up is A1, which is called breakthrough. This is your first introduction to the language. We're talking purely survival stuff, simple formulaic phrases.
So like a tourist asking, where's the bathroom?
Exactly, or an absolute beginner. Then you have A2, which is called wastage. Here you're moving a little bit beyond just survival. You can handle basic transactional needs.
Okay, so that's the starting point. But I think most of our listeners are aiming a bit higher than that. They're trying to get into that next category.
It's the independent user category.
All right.
Correct. And this is the middle ground. And it's often the most challenging part of the journey. It starts with B1, the threshold level. This is our getting by level. Like we said, you're comfortable with familiar topics, but you really struggle with abstract or specialized discussions.
And B1 is often the goal for like high school language classes.
Yes, it is, yeah. A common goal for compulsory secondary education. Then comes a big jump to B2, the vantage level. And this is the target for so many learners. B2 means you have a degree of fluency where you can have regular, sustained conversations with native speakers.
Sustained conversations, that's the key word.
It is, and that includes having specialized discussions in your own field of work.
And then, after that, we get to the really aspirational levels, the proficient user.
Right. That starts with C1, or effective operational proficiency. As C1, you can express yourself so clearly and with such a broad range of language that you never have to compromise or restrict what you actually want to say.
So you don't have to dumb down your thoughts anymore.
Not at all. And then you have the summit, the peak of the mountain, C2 or mastery. At this point, your communication is just comfortable, it's appropriate, and it's basically unhampered by any linguistic limitations. You're approaching near native mastery.
That structure is super clear.
Yeah.
But, we get a lot of feedback from listeners, and they always ask about that B1 to B2 jump. So let's really dedicate some time to that. What specifically changes between B1 and B2? Where does that B1 learner hit the wall most often?
It's a great question. The B1 struggle really centers on 2 things: sustained argumentation and flexibility. If you look at the official descriptors for interaction, you see it clearly. At B1, you can, and I quote, enter unprepared into conversation on familiar topics.
Unprepared, but familiar.
Okay.
So I can talk about my cat, but I can't suddenly jump into a nuanced debate about, I don't know, the ethical implications of artificial intelligence.
That's the perfect example. At B1, you can link a series of shorter, simple ideas into a straight line, a linear sequence. I think this, and I also think this, because of this reason.
Right. It's still a little bit basic, a little bit clunky.
It is, whereas the leap to B2 is all about complexity and fluidity. The B2 learner can initiate a conversation, they can sustain it, and they can end it appropriately. They use proper turn-taking strategies.
Okay, so it's a much more active role in the conversation.
A much more active role. They can use the language to build complex lines of thought. They use more advanced sentence structures and connectors, and this is key. They do it without obvious searching for words.
Ah. So the B2 user isn't just connecting simple blocks with and but. They're building these architectural sentences with multiple clauses, with hedging, with high-level connectors like nevertheless or in stark contrast.
That's the technical distinction, yes. But let's bring it back to that analogy we talked about before, the M1 concept expansion of driving a car. It makes it so much clearer. When you're at the A2 level, you are consciously thinking about the mechanics of driving.
Okay, so I'm thinking clutch in, change gear, clutch out, check mirror.
Exactly. You're thinking about verb conjugations, articles, basic word order. You're stressed. You're monitoring every single little thing you do. And that uses up like 90% of your brain power.
It's exhausting.
Yeah.
And it leaves no mental space for the actual traffic, the other cars, the unexpected questions, the listener's reaction. the actual communication.
Precisely. The B1 threshold is that magical point where those basic operations, the core grammar, the most common vocabulary, they start to become automatic. This is what the CEFR calls essential know-how or savoir-faire. The mechanics shift from your conscious control to your unconscious skill.
And that reduces the cognitive load.
Dramatically, it frees up your brain.
That's the key, isn't it? The B1 learner has finally automated the basics, which frees up all this mental energy for the real task, communicating complex ideas and navigating the actual social situation.
And to get to B2, you need even more of that free capacity. You need the flexibility to not just survive in a conversation, but to actually thrive in all sorts of different contexts.
Speaking of context, let's talk about the CEFR's core philosophy. The source material says it's action-oriented. Why is that so important for our B1 learner to understand?
Because it completely reframes how you think about using a language. It's not just about memorizing rules in a textbook. It's about seeing language as, quote, actions performed by persons who, as individuals and as social agents, develop a range of competences.
Okay, that sounds a little academic again. Actions performed by social agents?
It just means we use language to do things in the world, and we do these things across 4 main sectors of social life, which the CEFR calls domains.
Okay, domains. This is where the theory starts to get really practical. Let's break down these 4 domains from the source and give some real-world examples for each one.
Sounds good. First up is the personal domain. This is everything centered on your private life. So your home, your family, your friends, your hobbies, reading a book for fun, managing your household. It's very informal.
So those conversations we saw in the transcripts about cooking dinner or sitting on the sofa or visiting your parents, that's all personal domain language. The vocabulary is warm, common, probably full of idioms.
Exactly. Then we have the public domain. This is when you're acting as a member of the general public, going to the bank, using public transport, going to the cinema, or consuming media like reading the news. This involves more transactional language.
So filling out a form, asking a stranger for directions, reading a newspaper article, that's all public domain. The register, the level of formality, it shifts to neutral or even formal.
Correct. Next is the occupational domain. This is everything related to your job or your profession. The CEFR gives examples like seeking work permits, inquiring about product availability, or negotiating a contract. This requires very specific professional vocabulary.
And the last one.
The educational domain. That's any formal learning or training context, usually in a school or university. So it requires academic language, contributing to a seminar, writing a research paper, giving a presentation on a very specialized topic.
Okay, Riley, I have to challenge you on this a bit because I know our listeners will be thinking it. This all sounds very neat, very separate, personal, public, occupational, educational. But how does knowing these 4 boxes actually help me on a Monday morning when I'm trying to learn English?
That's a fantastic question. The real benefit comes from 2 things: targeted preparation and understanding the overlap. This is our M1 concept expansion. These domains are not separate boxes. They constantly intersect and overlap in real life.
Okay, give me an example.
Let's say you're a doctor. That's your occupational domain. But you're also studying for a new qualification. That's the educational domain. The language you need for both will overlap a lot, but the register, the formality, will be completely different.
Ah, I see. So the vocabulary for discussing a patient's symptoms is the same, but talking about it with a colleague by the coffee machine, which is a kind of personal and occupational overlap, is way more casual than presenting those same symptoms in a formal case study at a conference, which is an educational and occupational overlap.
You've got it. Or think about the media. Watching the news, that's the public domain, right? But it constantly penetrates your personal domain when you discuss that news with your family over dinner. Realizing this helps you target your studying. The language for the occupational domain, like negotiate contracts, is so different from the personal domain, like reading for pleasure. Recognizing that gap is the first step to filling it.
That brings a huge amount of structure to my learning plan. Okay, so within these domains, we perform tasks. We know the simple ones, like making breakfast. But how does the CEFR define a task?
A task is any purposeful action you take to achieve a specific result. It has to have an intention. It can be really complex, like, moving a wardrobe or writing a book. Or it can be totally routine, like ordering a meal.
Purposeful action.
Oh.
Got it. And if the task is complex or new to us, we have to use a strategy.
Exactly. A strategy is the organized, purposeful plan you choose to carry out that task. So if your task is to understand a complex work project, your strategy might be to use a dictionary for the technical words, or to ask a colleague for help, Or
if you're totally overwhelmed, your strategy might be to give up and wait until tomorrow.
not the best strategy, but yes, that's definitely a relatable one. So the whole action-oriented approach is about connecting you, the learner, with your skills, your competences, to achieve a goal, a task, within a specific setting, a domain.
That makes so much sense.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move from the big blueprint to the actual building blocks.
Yeah.
Vocabulary.
Yes. Let's shift to the materials. Lexical competence. Your vocabulary knowledge is the absolute foundation of everything else. And it's not just about single words. The CEFR puts a huge emphasis on mastering fixed expression.
Oh, I love this topic. Because B1 learners often feel okay with single words, but then a native speaker uses a normal phrase and we get lost.
That's because fixed expressions are learned and used as wholes. They're like giant vocabulary chunks. And the key thing is they're often semantically opaque.
Semantically opaque, meaning you can't guess the meaning from the individual words.
Not at all, which is why they're so tricky.
Okay, let's run our M2 vocabulary deep dive protocol on one of the most classic, most opaque idioms for the source material. Kick the bucket.
Let's do it. M2 Focus 1, kick the bucket.
So my first question is always, why? Why would I say he kicked the bucket when I could just say he died? What's the difference in tone or nuance?
The difference is all about register and social appropriateness. He died is neutral, it's direct, it's factual. Kick the bucket is a frozen metaphor. It's highly informal, and it often signals a tone that's irreverent, maybe even a bit darkly humorous.
So you wouldn't use it in a serious or respectful situation?
Definitely not. That opacity is why it's such a challenge for learners. Okay, let's run through our 5 distinct examples to see it in action.
Let's hear them.
Example looping, 5x. First, the formal context. As we said, this idiom is totally unsuitable here. You would never see it in an obituary or a legal document. Instead, for a business, you might say it ceased operations.
Right. So completely wrong for formal situations. What about casual?
Perfect for casual use. You might say, we were all worried about Grandpa, but he swore he wouldn't kick the bucket until he saw his team win the championship one last time. It's lighthearted, it's familiar.
Okay, I can see that. Now the funny or weird example.
This is where it gets interesting, because we often use it for machines or objects. Like, my laptop from university finally kicked the bucket last night, right in the middle of my big presentation. The screen just went black.
Oh, I've been there. So you can use it for something that's not alive. That's a great tip for sounding more fluent.
It is. Now, for the historical example, the origin is a bit debated, but one popular theory connects it to a pretty grim image. The idea is that a person standing on a bucket with a rope around their neck would kick the bucket away. It's a dark origin that's been frozen into this informal phrase.
Wow, okay. That's darker than I thought. And the last one, the philosophical use.
This is when you use it more contemplatively. I really want to travel the world and learn to scuba dive before I kick the bucket. Life's too short, you know?
That's a great example. It shows the full range. Okay, now for the extended scenario role play. Let's try it. I'll be someone trying to sell my very old car.
And I'll be the very honest, maybe too honest, car dealer.
So, what do you think? It's been a great car? How much do you think I can get for it as a trade-in?
Well, sir, let's be realistic. This car has seen better days, a lot better days. The engine sounds rough. I think it's about to kick the bucket any day now.
About to kick the bucket. No, it's just warming up. It always sounds like that.
And what about the radio? My mechanic told me the sound system kicked the bucket years ago.
Okay, the radio might have kicked the bucket, but the transmission is strong.
Sir, with all due respect, this car's best days are long gone. The whole thing is ready to kick the bucket. We can offer you $200 for scrap.
$200, I guess, is better than nothing for a car that's about to kick the bucket.
That really shows how you can use it with about to or ready to, which are very common collocations. And the nuance, again, is so important. It collocates with finally or completely. And please never use it to talk about someone who has just recently passed away in a serious context. It can sound very disrespectful.
That's a crucial tip. Okay, great. Let's do another one from the source. This one is about speed. Hell for leather.
Right. M2 Focus 2. Hell for leather.
This one is completely opaque to me. I mean, what does leather have to do with going fast? And how is it different from just saying very quickly?
It means moving at a really reckless, frantic, or just extremely fast pace. The difference is the intensity. Very quickly is neutral. Hell for leather suggests a kind of desperation or drama.
So there's more emotion in it.
A lot more. The phrase is opaque because it comes from a time when the fastest you could go was usually on a horse. Think about a rider pushing their horse to its absolute limit, gripping the leather saddle and reins for dear life. That's the image.
Ah, okay, the leather of the horse's saddle. That makes sense now. So it's
Yeah.
about that all-out, frantic gallop.
Exactly. Okay, let's do the 5 examples.
Let's hear them.
Example looping, 5x. 1. A formal but dramatic context you might read in a business history book. When the market crashed, investors sold their stocks hell for leather, trying to minimize their losses.
Okay, so it can be used for things that aren't physical movement, like financial markets.
Yes. 2. A casual example. I woke up late for my flight, so I had to drive hell for leather to the airport and just barely made it.
We've all been there. What about a funny or weird one?
You could say, as soon as I opened the bag of treats, my dog came running hell for leather from the other side of the house.
I can picture that perfectly.
And
And the historical context.
the historical use became popular in the 19th and early 20th centuries, often in books by writers like Rudyard Kipling, describing soldiers on horseback or frantic journeys. It really captures that pre-car era of desperate speed.
And a philosophical one.
Some people go through their whole lives hell for leather, chasing success, and they never stop to actually enjoy the journey.
I love that. It has this slightly old-fashioned dramatic feel. Okay, let's do the role play. We are colleagues on a very tight deadline.
Okay, I'm the stressed out project manager.
And I'm the slightly more calm but still rushing teammate.
Okay, we have 10 minutes until the presentation. Did you finish the final report?
Almost. I've been typing hell for leather all morning trying to get these last-minute changes in.
10 minutes. We can't be late. We need to get this submitted. I'm going to run hell for leather down to the CEO's office to give her a heads up.
Good idea. I just need to check these figures one last time. I don't want to have to go back and fix it later because we rushed it hell for leather.
You're right. But please work hell for leather. The client is waiting.
It's a very realistic, stressful office situation.
It is. And the nuance here is that it collocates strongly with verbs of motion. Ran, drove, raced, and also worked. It always emphasizes that intensity, that feeling of being almost out of control because of the speed.
This M2 approach really shows why you need these phrases for B2. It adds so much color and precision.
And it's not just idioms. We also have to mention fixed frames or sentential formulae. These are whole phrases you learn as one chunk, like greetings, how do you do, good morning? Or requests like, please, may I have a...
Right. These reduce the cognitive load. I don't have to build a sentence word by word, so my brain is free to think about the actual topic of the conversation.
And finally, there are fixed collocations. These are words that just naturally go together. They're not totally opaque like idioms, but they are conventional pairings.
Like make a speech or make a mistake.
Exactly. And this is a classic B1 struggle. We make a decision, we don't do a decision. We usually do our homework, not make our homework. Just knowing that the correct verb partner for mistake is make is a huge signal of your linguistic development and accuracy. It's essential for B2.
Okay, so we have the building blocks, the vocabulary. Now let's look at the bigger picture again, those 3 competences you mentioned earlier.
Yes. If vocabulary is the material, now we look at the whole building. The 3 components of communicative language competence that you have to develop together: linguistic, sociolinguistic, and pragmatic.
I really like that the CEFR makes you think about language as a whole set of skills, not just, grammar exercises. Let's start with the one everyone knows, linguistic competence.
Right. Linguistic competence is your knowledge of the language as a formal system. It's your vocabulary, your phonology, so the sounds, and your syntax, which is the grammar and sentence structure. And the difference between B1 and C1 here is huge.
Okay, so what's the big linguistic sign of a B2 learner? What can they do?
At B2, the learner has a sufficient range of language to be able to give clear descriptions, express viewpoints, and develop arguments. And here's the key part: without much conspicuous searching for words.
Without much conspicuous searching. So they might still be searching a little bit, but it's not obvious and painful to watch.
Exactly. The key is fluency. They can use complex sentences for abstract ideas, but they still might pause. They might not always pick the absolute best word, but they find a good enough one pretty quickly.
Okay, good enough, but not always perfect. So what does C1 demand that's different?
C1 is all about precision and never having to limit yourself. The C1 learner can select an appropriate formulation from a broad range of language and express herself clearly without having to restrict what she wants to say.
Wait, let me just unpack that for everyone listening. That means a C1 speaker never has that feeling of, oh, I have this really complex thought, but I don't know the English words, so I'll just say a simpler version of it.
That is the perfect summary. They never have to dumb down their own thoughts. They have the linguistic tools to express the idea precisely and eloquently.
That's the dream. Now, in this section, the source has some technical terms that sound a bit scary, but you said they're important. Orthographic and orthoepic competence. Let's start with orthographic.
Orthographic competence is all about your skill with the written symbols of a language. We're talking spelling, punctuation, capitalization. It's purely focused on the visual, written side of things, like writing a professional email or an essay.
So if I'm always misspelling the word definitely, or I don't know where to put commas, my orthographic competence needs some work. That's simple enough.
It is. Now, for the other side of the coin, orthoepic competence. A simpler way to think of this is the skill of sounding it out correctly. It's your ability to produce the correct pronunciation of a word just by looking at the written form.
Oh, okay. So when I'm reading an article and I see a new word I'd never heard before, like ubiquitous, my orthoepic competence is what allows me to look at those letters and know how to say it out loud correctly.
Absolutely. And it's so important for growing your vocabulary. If you can read a word but you're not confident enough to say it, that word stays stuck in your receptive vocabulary. It never becomes part of your active spoken language.
That's a really powerful distinction. Okay, let's talk about the sound itself.
Yeah.
Phonological control. The CEFR says you don't need a perfect accent, but you do need to be understood.
Right. At the B1 level, the goal is pretty simple. Pronunciation is clearly intelligible, even if a foreign accent is sometimes evident and occasional mispronunciations occur.
So having an accent is totally fine. The problem is if you mispronounce a word so badly that people don't know what you're saying.
Exactly. But by the time you get to C1, the goalposts have moved completely. It's not just about being understood, it's about artistic control. The C1 learner can vary intonation and place sentence stress correctly in order to express finer shades of meaning.
Whoa, okay. Finer shades of meaning. That's not just about clarity anymore. That's about conveying emotion and intention.
It is. Think about a simple sentence like, I didn't steal the money. If I put the stress on I didn't steal the money, it means someone else did. If I stress I didn't steal the money, it implies I might have borrowed it, but I didn't steal it.
And if you stress money, I didn't steal the money, it means you stole something else.
Precisely. The C1 learner has that level of control over the rhythm and stress to convey those subtle intentions. That is the real gap between B2 and C1 linguistic mastery.
That's an amazing way to define true mastery. It's about controlling the music of the language, not just playing the right notes. Okay, on to the next competence.
Let's move to the social rules. Sociolinguistic competence. This is where we learn not just what to say, but how to say it to the right person in the right context.
This feels so important. It's the difference between being correct and being polite.
It is. This is your knowledge of how to navigate the social side of language. Politeness, register, all the little linguistic clues about social relationships. You can be grammatically perfect, but if you're socially inappropriate, you've failed sociolinguistically.
Like the example of saying, make me a coffee to your boss. Grammatically, it's a perfect sentence, but socially, it's a disaster.
A total disaster. The CEEFR talks about this through register differences. It actually identifies 6 different registers, or levels of formality.
6. Okay, let's break them down because learners often get these mixed up.
So we have frozen, which is fixed ceremonial language like a pledge or a prayer. Then formal, which is for serious public speaking or official documents. Then neutral, which is standard, polite language you'd use with a stranger in a shop. This is the default.
Okay, that's 3. What are the others?
Informal is relaxed and conversational for colleagues or classmates. Familiar is very casual for your close friends. And finally, intimate, which is for your closest relationships, full of private jokes and shortcuts.
That spectrum is so helpful. Now, the source material gives our B1 learner a really important piece of advice. For now, stick to the neutral register. Why is it so important?
Because the neutral register is what native speakers usually expect from and use with foreigners or strangers. It's the safest option. If you get the register wrong, you risk serious problems. The source warns that using, say, a familiar register in a formal situation can lead to misinterpretation or even ridicule.
Right, so if I talk to my new boss with the same slang I use with my best friend, I'm going to seem unprofessional and disrespectful.
Exactly. You haven't mastered the social rules of that domain. And this leads us perfectly to an M2 protocol on politeness conventions, specifically on something called negative politeness.
Okay, M2 protocol, negative politeness. That sounds, well, negative. What is it and how is it different from just being polite and saying please?
It's a great question. Negative politeness is often about avoidance. It's about avoiding imposing on the other person or threatening their face, their public self-image,
Yeah.
you use language to show respect and to make your request seem smaller. The most common way to do this is by using hedges.
Hedges, like the bushes in a garden.
Sort of. They are linguistic shields. They're words or phrases that soften what you're saying. Instead of being direct, you create a little distance or express uncertainty.
Okay, so I'm giving the other person an easy way to say no.
That's a big part of it. Let's do our 5 examples to see how these hedges work.
Let's do it.
Example looping, 5x, focusing on hedges. First, you can express uncertainty. Instead of saying, this is the solution, you say, I think this might be the most effective solution. It shows it's just your opinion.
Okay, that's a good one. What's next?
Second, you use modal verbs to create distance. Instead of check this data, you say, I was wondering if you might be able to check this data. It turns a command into a very soft question.
That's so much nicer. I use that one all the time.
Third, you use minimizers. Could you give me a little bit of feedback on this report? The phrase, a little bit, makes the task sound smaller and less of a burden.
Right, you're not asking for a huge favor.
Exactly. Fourth, use tentative adverbs. Perhaps we should consider a different approach. The word perhaps makes it a suggestion, not a demand.
And the fifth one?
Fifth, use tag questions. That deadline is a bit tight, isn't it? This invites the other person to agree with you, making it a shared observation instead of a complaint.
Using these makes you sound so much more collaborative and respectful. Okay, let's do the extended role play. I'll be a manager, and I'll start with the blunt A2 level request. You be the employee.
Okay, I'm ready. I'm a bit overworked.
I need this report finished. Stop what you're doing. Do it now. I need it by noon.
Oh, okay. I'm working on the other project you said was urgent, but okay, I'll switch. I'd be feeling pretty stressed and annoyed.
Right, because that was a direct command that threatened your autonomy. Now, let's try the B2 negatively polite version. Hi there. I know you're probably swamped, but I was wondering if you might have a moment. Something urgent has come up with this report. I think legal needs it by noon, which is a bit tight, isn't it? Perhaps we could look at it together for a little bit.
Well, of course. If legal is involved, it must be important. Yes, I can definitely shift my focus to that right now. Thanks for letting me know.
See? The result is the same. The report gets done. But the social feeling, the rapport, is completely different. The B2 speaker respected the employee's face.
And that is exactly what the jump to B2 and C1 sociolinguistic competence is all about, mastering those subtle, functional ways of showing respect.
Okay, that leaves one more competence, the last piece of the puzzle.
The capstone. Pragmatic competence. This is the highest level, where you integrate all your other skills to organize and use your messages effectively to achieve your goal.
So this covers things like how you structure a story, and something called cohesion and coherence.
Exactly. Let's start with the functional side. The CEFR talks about microfunctions and macrofunctions.
Micro and macro, so small and big functions.
Pretty much. Microfunctions are the small, specific things you do with language, like expressing certainty, I'm sure of that, or emotion, I'm so happy about, or trying to persuade someone. Macrofunctions are the bigger things you build with those microblocks, like telling a whole story, narration, explaining something, a description, or building an argument.
So if I'm telling my friend about my holiday, that's a narration macro function. And when I say it was the best trip ever, that's an emotion microfunction inside the story.
You've got it. And the quality of your macrofunction, your story, depends on how well you link all the pieces together. Which brings us to discourse connectors. These are the words that create cohesion and coherence.
Okay, I know B1 learners get these two words mixed up all the time. Cohesion and coherence. What is the actual difference?
It's a crucial distinction. Let's do an M2 protocol on it. Cohesion is about the surface links. It's the linguistic glue that holds your sentences together. These are your transition words like however, therefore, in addition, or using pronouns like it and they to refer back to something.
So a cohesive text has all the right grammatical links. The sentences are stitched together properly.
Correct. But a text can be perfectly cohesive and still make no sense. That's where coherence comes in. Coherence is about the meaning. It's the logical structure. A text is coherent if it's free from internal contradictions, and it all fits together to make logical sense to the listener.
Whoa, that's a huge difference. So I could write an essay that's very cohesive using all the right transition words, but if my argument in paragraph 3 completely contradicts my argument in paragraph 1, my essay lacks coherence. It's illogical.
That is the perfect explanation, and B2 learners are expected to achieve both. They need to produce clear, smoothly flowing arguments where the logic holds up.
Let's run the M2 protocol on the word coherence itself, just to make sure we've got it.
Good idea. Example looping, 5x, on coherence. 1. A formal example from a courtroom. While the speech was emotional, the lawyer's argument lacked logical coherence and was full of contradictions.
Okay, so it didn't make sense as a whole.
Right. 2. A casual example. Our plan for the weekend has no coherence. You want to go hiking and I want to go to the museum. We need a coherent plan.
I have that conversation every weekend. What about a weird one?
A funny weird one. I had a dream that was so bizarre, it had absolutely no narrative coherence. 1 minute I was flying, the next I was a teapot.
I've had that dream too. And philosophical.
A philosophical example. Many scientists search for an underlying coherence in the laws of the universe, a theory that explains everything.
And finally, an organizational one.
The company's new strategy lacks coherence. The marketing department is saying one thing and the sales department is saying the complete opposite.
Those examples really show how deep that concept goes. Pragmatic competence is really about mastering structure and logic.
And one final part of it is recognizing text types. Pragmatic competence is knowing how to organize your message differently if you're writing a formal email versus sending a quick text message to a friend.
Right. The medium changes the message. An email needs a greeting and a closing. A text message doesn't. That's pragmatic competence.
Exactly.
Okay, this has been an amazing deep dive into the theory. Now let's bring it back to the real world. How do modern learners actually use this stuff, especially when they're learning online, like on YouTube?
This is a great transition because the student thesis we looked at analyzed exactly that. Learners using the English with Lucy YouTube channel. And what the students said confirms the CEFR's focus completely. They said vocabulary is the basis and the main key to learning. A lack of vocabulary, they found, can severely hamper language acquisition.
So it all comes back to the words.
It's the most critical starting point for B1 learners. But it wasn't just about the words, it was about the emotional experience of learning, which the CEFR calls affect.
Affect. So our feelings about the learning process.
Exactly. And the students in the study mostly reported very positive affect. They felt confident, satisfied, comfortable, happy, and motivated.
And why? What was the YouTube creator doing that made them feel so good about learning?
It came down to 3 things: relevance, clarity, and context. The vocabulary was useful for daily life, the explanations were clear, and the pronunciation was easy to follow.
Let's talk about context, because the source gave a great example about learning the names of British food, like beef Wellington or shepherd's pie. How does learning a recipe help my English?
It's not about the recipe, it's about the sociocultural knowledge that comes with it. This is our M1 concept expansion. When you learn about beef Wellington, you learn it's a fancy special occasion dish. That's social context. When you learn about shepherd's pie, you learn about the cultural tradition of using lamb and how that's different from cottage pie, which uses beef.
So learning the word is just the first step. The real learning is understanding the culture around the word.
Precisely. The CEFR says this sociocultural knowledge is essential because it's often completely outside the learner's previous experience. It helps you understand the personal and public domains of a new culture.
That's a really powerful link. But it wasn't all positive, was it? The students also reported some negative effect. What made them feel anxious or uncertain?
The biggest problem was the lack of interactive support. When you're watching a pre-recorded video, there's no teacher to ask questions to. If it moves too fast or you don't understand something, you're stuck.
The classic problem of learning on your own. So what's the solution? If there's no teacher to provide support, what do learners do?
This brings us to the idea of scaffolding. Scaffolding is just a fancy word for support. It's a temporary structure that helps you do something that would be too difficult on your own. Traditionally, a teacher provides that scaffolding.
They might give you a sentence starter or break a big task into smaller steps.
Exactly. But modern learners are incredibly resourceful. They're turning to digital tools, especially AI like ChatGPT, to create their own digital scaffolding. They'll take a difficult C1 level news article and ask the AI to rewrite it for a B1 level. Or they'll ask the AI to create practice exercises for them.
That's brilliant. They're using AI to customize their own learning materials to be at the perfect level for them. The AI is becoming the personal tutor.
And it shows that learners are actively trying to bridge that gap between understanding a word when they read it and being able to use it themselves.
Okay, speaking of using words, let's do one final M2 protocol on a great idiom that's all about that feeling of not quite knowing something. Let's do put your finger on it.
It's a great choice. M2 protocol. Put your finger on it.
This is one of my favorites. If I look up the words put or finger in a dictionary, it's no help at all. What does this phrase actually mean? And why do we almost always use it in the negative?
Its meaning is to identify or articulate something precisely. Usually it's an abstract feeling, a subtle problem, or a vague memory. And you're right, it's most often used in the negative, I can't quite put my finger on it, to express that you sense something is wrong or different, but you can't name the specific reason.
It's the perfect phrase for that tip of the tongue feeling. Okay, let's do the 5 examples.
Example looping, 5x. 1. A formal business context. The financial report looks okay on the surface, but something feels off. I just can't put my finger on what it is.
Okay, so it shows an intuition that something is wrong.
Exactly. 2. A casual example about a person. That guy over there looks so familiar, but I can't for the life of me put my finger on where I know him from.
Classic situation. How about a funny one?
A funny, weird one related to senses. This soup tastes interesting. There's a strange spice in here. I can't quite put my finger on it.
And an abstract one.
The whole atmosphere in the office changed after the new manager started. Everyone feels it, but nobody can put their finger on exactly why.
And finally, about a personal feeling.
I've just been feeling a bit down all day. Nothing bad happened. I just can't put my finger on the reason.
Those are perfect. It always conveys that subtle uncertainty. Okay, let's do the role play. We're trying to decide if we should hire someone after an interview.
Okay, you're the hiring manager and I'm your colleague.
So what did you think of the last candidate? Her resume is perfect. She has all the skills.
I know, on paper she's amazing, but I don't know, there was just something about her answers. I can't quite put my finger on it.
What do you mean? She answered all the technical questions correctly.
She did. But her body language felt a bit off. I can't put my finger on exactly what it was, but she didn't seem very confident.
So you have a bad feeling, but you can't put your finger on the specific reason.
Exactly. It's just a gut feeling. It's frustrating when you can't put your finger on the problem.
That's a great demonstration. The nuance here is that it's almost always used for feelings, abstract problems or memories, and it works great with adverbs like quite or exactly.
And the source highlights that learning these phrases as chunks, like I can't quite put my finger on it, is so much more effective than learning the individual words.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, that was amazing. Now it's time for the segment where we clear up some common confusions.
The common mistakes segment.
You teased this at the very beginning, and I'm ready. My first question. Can I say that an error and a mistake are the same thing in English learning?
Mistake 1. Error versus mistake. It's such a common assumption, but no, you cannot. In linguistics, they are two fundamentally different things, and understanding this can really change your mindset as a learner.
Okay, so break it down for us. What is the real difference?
An error is systematic. It happens because there's a gap or a flaw in your interlanguage.
Interlanguage, what's that?
Your interlanguage is the version of English that currently exists in your head. It's your own personal, evolving system of rules. An error means one of your rules is wrong.
Okay, so if I always say I go to store instead of I go to the store because my native language doesn't use articles, that's a problem in my system. It's a systematic error.
A perfect example. You make it every time because your internal grammar rule is incomplete. Now, a mistake is completely different. A mistake is just a slip in performance. It happens when you already know the correct rule, your competence is there, but you're tired or stressed or not paying attention, and you just get it wrong.
Ah. So like when a fluent speaker who knows the difference between your and your accidentally types the wrong one because they're in a hurry.
Exactly. A typo, a slip of the tongue, a moment of confusion under pressure, those are mistakes. And the CEFR says teachers should handle them differently. Errors need to be retaught, but mistakes can often just be self-corrected.
That is so empowering for a learner. It changes how you see your own imperfections. An error is a learning opportunity. A mistake is just a mistake.
It's a total mindset shift.
Okay, next common problem, mistake 2. Receptive versus productive vocabulary. Can I assume that if I understand a word when I read it, I'll be able to use it when I speak?
Another dangerous assumption for intermediate learners. The answer is a definite no. You're confusing your receptive vocabulary with your active or productive vocabulary. The sources are clear that for most learners, these are two very different lists of words.
I feel this so much. I can read a complicated article and understand almost everything, but when I try to talk about it, all those sophisticated words just disappear from my brain.
That's because your receptive vocabulary, all the words you can understand when you hear or read them, is huge. It's always much bigger. But your active or productive vocabulary, the words you can actually pull out of your brain and use correctly in a conversation, is much, much smaller.
So for a B1 learner trying to get to B2, the job isn't just learning more new words. It's about moving words from that passive receptive list over to the active productive list.
That is the #1 job. And you do it through active practice and forced retrieval. Things like shadowing, using flashcards where you have to produce the word yourself, or doing speaking exercises where you force yourself to use your new vocabulary. Fluency is about fast, easy access to your productive words.
That is such a practical goal. Okay, final common confusion. Mistake 3, over-relying on analogy. Let's say I'm an expert at leading meetings in my first language. Does that mean I have the know-how, the savoir-faire, to lead a meeting in English?
This is maybe the deepest point from the CEFR's philosophy. The answer is your general skill, your savoir-faire, does transfer. You know the procedure. But applying it successfully in a second language requires you to integrate 2 other very personal competencies.
And what are those?
First is the obvious one, linguistic competence. You need the words to run the agenda. But the second and more important one is your existential competence, or savoir-être.
Existential competence, savoir-être. Let's spend a moment on that. What is it and why does it fall apart when I switch to my second language?
Existential competence is basically your personality in action. It's your attitudes, your confidence, your motivation, your willingness to take risks. In your native language, you lead that meeting with a relaxed confidence. That's your L1 savoir-être.
But the second I have to do it in English, I'm not relaxed anymore. I'm suddenly tense. I'm monitoring my grammar. I'm searching for words.
Exactly. All those new linguistic and sociolinguistic challenges immediately impact your self-image. You become self-conscious, you're less willing to take risks, and your confidence plummets. Your savoir-être is compromised. So your ability to lead the meeting is suddenly limited not by your skill, but by your own anxiety.
That is such a profound barrier. The general skill is there, but the stress of communicating in L2 stops me from using my full personality.
So the path to true mastery isn't just about learning more grammar. It's about slowly building your L2 confidence, your L2 savoir-être, so you can be yourself in your new language.
Wow. That's a goal worth aiming for. Okay, that was an incredibly helpful segment.
I agree. And you navigated that with some impressive pragmatic coherence, I must say. So now it's time for our listeners to test what they've retained. It's time for the pop quiz.
I'm ready. Let's do it.
Okay, test 1. A B2 learner is a bit stressed and accidentally says, "My old car finally kicked the pail instead of kicked the bucket." Is that a systematic error or a performance mistake?
Okay, based on our definitions, they know the correct idiom, but they just slipped up under pressure. So that is a performance mistake.
Spot on. It was just a slip. Excellent. Test 2. In our discussion on sociolinguistic competence, what were the 2 main types of politeness we talked about in the workplace roleplay?
We focused on using negative politeness, which uses hedges and soft language to avoid being too direct, and we contrasted that with blunt, face-threatening commands.
Perfect. Negative politeness and appropriate polite forms. Last one. Test 3. Why is the B1 level officially called the threshold level? What is the threshold you are crossing?
B1 is the threshold, because it's the point where the cognitive load, the basic language mechanics, grammar, simple words, starts to become automatic. It becomes know-how. You cross the threshold from conscious effort to unconscious skill, which frees up your brain for real communication.
3 for 3. Fantastic. Hopefully everyone listening did just as well.
That was an incredibly dense and useful session. Let's just summarize the top 3 core concepts that we learned today for that path to B2.
Okay. First, we really understood the importance of the B1 threshold and that the jump to B2 is all about making those basic operations automatic, turning them into know-how.
Second, we broke down the 3 communicative competences. Linguistic, which is the formal system, sociolinguistic, which is the social rules like register, and pragmatic, which is all about logical structure and coherence.
And third, we saw how modern learners are using the power of affect their emotions and tools like digital scaffolding to create a positive and personalized learning journey.
And now for the top 5 vocabulary words and phrases we did a deep dive on today.
They were 1. Kicked the bucket.
2. Orthopic, the skill of pronouncing a written word correctly.
3. Interlanguage, your own personal, evolving version of English.
4. Scaffolding, the support structure that helps you learn.
And 5. Put your finger on it.
To really lock this knowledge in and move it to your productive vocabulary, we have a micro challenge for you.
We want you to look at your own English learning activities this week. Identify one activity that falls into the occupational domain and one that's in the personal domain.
If you're feeling really brave, try to use one of the idioms we talked about today in a comment below this episode, or just in your own private journal. Go on, activate that vocabulary.
And please, if you've enjoyed this deep dive and you made it all the way to the end, take a moment to like this episode and subscribe to English Podcast Voice.
Your support truly ensures that we can keep making these super detailed breakdowns for you.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the Language Architect's Blueprint.
I'm Quinn. See you next time.
And I'm Riley.